What if I told you that the difference between those who dominate their field and those who struggle isn't talent, luck, or even hard work? What if I told you that elite performers, the top 1% in business, sports, leadership, and life, operate with a completely different mental operating system than everyone else? While most people rely on motivation, hope, and outdated strategies, peak performers have cracked the code of human psychology. They've discovered the hidden mental patterns, cognitive frameworks, and performance principles that allow them to consistently operate at levels most people can't even imagine. This isn't about working harder. This isn't about grinding until you burn out. This is about rewiring your brain to think, process, and perform like the elite minds who shape our world. The human brain is the most sophisticated performance machine ever created. Yet 99% of people never learn how to use it properly. They let their minds run on autopilot, controlled by outdated programming, fear-based thinking, and limitations they never chose for themselves. But the top performers, they've taken control of their mental machinery. Today, you're going to discover the psychological secrets that separate peak performers from everyone else. You'll learn how elite minds process pressure, make decisions, and maintain laser focus when others crumble. You'll uncover the cognitive strategies that turn ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. But here's the truth that changes everything. Peak performance isn't a destination. It's a way of thinking. It's not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a mental discipline you develop, refine, and strengthen every single day. By the time you finish this audiobook, you won't just understand how elite minds work. You'll be an elite mind. You'll have the psychological tools, mental frameworks, and performance strategies to dominate any challenge, crush any goal, and win in any arena. Are you ready to unlock the psychology of peak performance and join the ranks of those who don't just dream about success, they engineer it? There's a moment in every elite performer's journey when they realize something that changes everything. It's not when they win their first championship, close their first $1 million deal, or get promoted to the C-suite. It's the moment they understand that success isn't about what they do. It's about how they think. Most people believe that peak performers are just like everyone else but with better skills, more talent, or superior training. This is completely wrong. Elite performers operate with fundamentally different mental programming. They don't just perform differently, they think differently, process information differently, and relate to pressure, failure, and success in ways that would seem alien to the average person. The first distinguishing characteristic of elite minds is their relationship with discomfort. While most people spend their lives avoiding pain, uncertainty, and challenge, peak performers have conditioned themselves to seek it out. They understand that comfort is the enemy of growth, and they've rewired their brains to interpret discomfort as a signal that they're expanding their capabilities. When faced with a difficult situation, the average person asks, "How can I avoid this?" The elite performer asks, "How can I use this?" This isn't positive thinking. It's a fundamental difference in how their brains are programmed to interpret reality. Peak performers have also mastered what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different mental frameworks depending on the situation. While most people have rigid thinking patterns that trap them in limited responses, elite minds can instantly switch between analytical thinking, creative problem solving, emotional intelligence, and strategic planning as needed. Think about it. When a crisis hits, most people become overwhelmed because they're trying to process everything through one mental framework. Elite performers remain calm because they can immediately shift to crisis management mode, accessing different cognitive resources that most people don't even know they have. Another critical difference is their relationship with failure. Most people experience failure as a threat to their identity. When they fail, their inner dialogue becomes, "I'm not good enough. I can't do this," or "maybe I should quit." Elite performers have completely reframed failure in their minds. To them, failure isn't a judgment on their worth. It's data, it's feedback, it's information they can use to calibrate their approach. This isn't just a mindset shift. It's a neurological rewiring. Elite performers have trained their brains to process setbacks through the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, rather than the amygdala, the emotional brain. This allows them to extract lessons, make adjustments, and move forward without the emotional baggage that paralyzes most people. Elite minds also operate with what researchers call deliberate practice, but it goes deeper than just focused training. Peak performers have developed the ability to maintain conscious awareness during performance. While most people go on autopilot during familiar tasks, elite performers stay mentally engaged, constantly analyzing, adjusting, and optimizing their approach in real time. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that their mind is their primary tool. And like any tool, it must be maintained, sharpened, and continuously upgraded. They don't just rely on natural ability. They systematically develop their cognitive capabilities, emotional regulation, and mental stamina with the same precision that an athlete trains their body. The research is clear. When neuroscientists study the brains of elite performers across different fields, from chess grandmasters to Navy SEALs to Fortune 500 CEOs, they find similar patterns of neural activity, cognitive processing, and mental architecture. The elite mind isn't born, it's built. So what does this mean for you? It means that peak performance isn't reserved for a select few with special genetics or unique circumstances. It's available to anyone willing to understand and implement the psychological principles that govern elite achievement. The question isn't whether you have the potential to think like an elite performer. The question is whether you're willing to abandon the mental patterns that keep you average and embrace the cognitive discipline that creates champions. Your brain is either your greatest asset or your biggest limitation. The difference between these two possibilities isn't genetics, age, or intelligence. It's understanding how to optimize your neural architecture for peak performance. Neuroscientists have discovered something revolutionary. The brains of elite performers are physically different from those of average performers. This isn't because they were born special. It's because they've systematically rewired their neural networks through specific mental training protocols. When researchers scan the brains of world-class musicians, they find enlarged areas responsible for fine motor control and auditory processing. When they study elite athletes, they discover enhanced regions for spatial awareness and decision-making under pressure. When they examine top business leaders, they find strengthened networks for pattern recognition and emotional regulation. The key insight is this: your brain is neuroplastic, meaning it physically reshapes itself based on how you use it. Every thought you think, every skill you practice, and every mental pattern you repeat is literally sculpting your brain structure. Peak performers understand this at an intuitive level. They don't just train their craft, they train their brains. They engage in what neuroscientists call cognitive cross-training, deliberately developing mental capacities that most people leave to chance. One of the most important discoveries in performance neuroscience is the role of the default mode network (DMN). This is the brain network that's active when you're not focused on a specific task. When your mind is wandering, daydreaming, or running on autopilot. In most people, the DMN is dominated by self-referential thinking, worry, and mental chatter that drains cognitive resources. Elite performers have learned to optimize their DMN instead of mental noise. Their default state is characterized by what researchers call relaxed awareness, a state of calm alertness that allows for rapid cognitive switching and enhanced pattern recognition. They've essentially reprogrammed their brain screen-saver *. This optimization happens through specific practices that elite performers use consistently. Focused attention training. While most people believe they can multitask effectively, neuroscience proves that divided attention leads to decreased performance across all tasks. Elite performers train their ability to sustain focused attention for extended periods, literally strengthening the neural networks responsible for concentration. Stress inoculation. Peak performers deliberately expose themselves to control stress to build mental resilience. This process called hormetic stress actually strengthens the brain's ability to function under pressure by improving the efficiency of stress response systems. Cognitive load management. Elite minds have learned to distinguish between essential and non-essential mental processing. They offload routine decisions like what to wear or eat to automatic systems, preserving cognitive resources for high-impact thinking. Mental recovery protocols. Just as physical muscles need recovery time, the brain requires periods of restoration to maintain peak function. Elite performers have developed sophisticated recovery strategies that optimize neural repair and enhancement. The prefrontal cortex, often called the brain CEO, plays a crucial role in peak performance. This region is responsible for executive functions like decision impulse control, and working memory. Elite performers have typically developed enhanced prefrontal cortex function through specific training protocols. But here's what most people don't understand. The prefrontal cortex is easily depleted by decision fatigue, emotional stress, and cognitive overload. Peak performers protect this precious resource through strategic mental energy management. They eliminate unnecessary decisions, automate routine behaviors, and create environmental systems that reduce cognitive friction. Another critical neural system for peak performance is the brain's reward circuitry. Most people have hijacked reward systems that respond more strongly to immediate gratification than long-term achievement. Elite performers have recalibrated their reward systems to find genuine satisfaction in the process of improvement rather than just outcomes. This neurological rewiring explains why elite performers can maintain motivation during long periods without external validation. Their brains have been conditioned to release dopamine in response to quality effort, skill development, and incremental progress rather than just final results. The research also reveals that peak performers have enhanced interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense internal bodily signals. This heightened body awareness allows them to detect early signs of fatigue, stress, or optimal arousal states, enabling micro-adjustments that maintain performance quality. Understanding these neurological principles isn't just academic, it's practical. When you know how your brain creates peak performance, you can systematically develop the neural architecture that supports elite achievement. You stop leaving your mental development to chance and start engineering your cognitive capabilities. With precision, the elite mind isn't a mystery. It's a masterpiece of deliberate neural sculpting. And now that you understand the neuroscience behind it, you can begin building your own. Elite performers don't make better decisions because they're smarter. They make better decisions because they think through better frameworks. While most people rely on intuition, emotion, or limited experience to guide their choices, peak performers have developed sophisticated mental models that allow them to process complex information, anticipate consequences, and choose optimal strategies with remarkable consistency. A mental model is a cognitive framework that helps you understand how something works. It's a thinking tool that simplifies complexity and reveals patterns that would otherwise be invisible. Elite performers in every field have mastered the art of mental model collection and application, giving them a decisive advantage in decision-making, speed, and accuracy. Consider how a chess grandmaster thinks differently from a novice. The novice sees individual pieces and considers a few possible moves. The grandmaster sees patterns, recognizes strategic themes, and can instantly evaluate thousands of positions based on well-developed mental models of pawn structures, piece coordination, and endgame principles. They're not necessarily more intelligent. They're thinking through superior frameworks. This same principle applies across all domains of peak performance. Elite business leaders use mental models for market analysis, competitive strategy, and organizational behavior. Top athletes employ mental models for technique optimization, game theory, and performance under pressure. World-class investors rely on mental models for risk assessment, value identification, and market psychology. The most powerful mental models used by elite performers include first principles thinking instead of reasoning by analogy or accepting conventional wisdom. Elite performers break down complex problems to their fundamental components. They ask, what do we know to be true, rather than what has worked before. This allows them to discover innovative solutions that others miss because they're not constrained by existing approaches. Systems thinking. Peak performers understand that everything exists within interconnected systems. They don't just focus on individual events. They examine the underlying structures, feedback loops, and leverage points that drive systemic behavior. This prevents them from applying band-aid solutions to systemic problems. Probabilistic thinking. While most people think in absolutes, elite performers think in probabilities. They understand that uncertainty is the only certainty, and they make decisions based on likelihood assessments rather than false certainty. This allows them to calibrate their confidence appropriately and make better bets. Inversion. Elite performers regularly use inversion, thinking about what could go wrong instead of just what could go right by imagining failure scenarios. They identify potential pitfalls and design strategies to avoid them. This mental model prevents many costly mistakes that derail average performers. Second-order thinking. While most people consider only the immediate consequences of their actions, peak performers think several steps ahead. They ask, and then what? Repeatedly tracing the chain of consequences to understand the true impact of their decisions. Opportunity cost. Elite performers understand that every choice involves trade-offs. When evaluating options, they don't just consider what they might gain. They carefully examine what they might be giving up. This prevents them from being seduced by shiny objects that distract from higher value activities. Mental model stacking. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers don't rely on single mental models. They combine multiple frameworks to create more robust and nuanced understanding. They might use systems thinking to understand a problem, probabilistic thinking to assess risks, and inversion to identify potential failures. All within the same decision-making process. The development of mental models isn't accidental among elite performers. They systematically study how the best thinkers in various fields approach problems. They read biographies of great leaders, study case studies of successful strategies, and extract the underlying thinking patterns that led to breakthrough results. They also engage in what cognitive scientists call deliberate reflection, consciously analyzing their own decision-making processes to identify which mental models worked well and which need refinement. This metacognitive awareness allows them to continuously upgrade their thinking frameworks. Elite performers also understand the limitations of mental models. They know that every model is incomplete and that over-reliance on any single framework can create blind spots. They remain intellectually humble, constantly testing their assumptions and updating their models based on new evidence. This intellectual agility is what allows peak performers to thrive in rapidly changing environments. While others become obsolete, they don't cling to outdated mental models out of emotional attachment. They ruthlessly update their frameworks when reality demands it. Most importantly, elite performers have internalized their mental models to the point where superior thinking becomes automatic. They don't have to consciously remember to use these frameworks. They've become integrated into their cognitive architecture through deliberate practice and repetition. The tragedy is that most people never develop sophisticated mental models. They rely on simplistic thinking patterns that were adequate for simpler times but inadequate for complex modern challenges. They make decisions based on surface-level information, emotional reactions, or social pressure rather than deep understanding of underlying principles. But this represents an enormous opportunity. By studying and implementing the mental models used by elite performers, you can dramatically upgrade your decision-making capabilities. You can start seeing patterns that others miss, anticipating consequences that others ignore, and making choices that others can't even conceive. The elite mind isn't just more knowledgeable, it's more systematically organized. It operates through proven frameworks that consistently produce superior results. And these frameworks can be learned, practiced, and mastered by anyone willing to invest in upgrading their cognitive toolkit. Asterisk in a world designed to fragment your attention. The ability to maintain deep focus has become the ultimate competitive advantage. While the average person checks their phone 96 times per day and can only sustain concentrated attention for 8 seconds, elite performers have mastered the art of sustained laser-focused attention that allows them to operate at cognitive levels most people never experience. This isn't just about productivity or time management. It's about accessing higher orders of mental processing that are only available when your brain can dedicate its full resources to a single task. Neuroscientists have discovered that deep focus literally changes your brain chemistry, increasing the production of neurotransmitters that enhance learning, memory, and creative insight. Elite performers understand that attention is their most valuable resource, and they protect it with the same vigilance that a Fortune 500 company protects its most critical assets. They've developed sophisticated attention management systems that most people have never even considered. The first principle of elite focus is understanding the different types of attention and how to optimize each. 1. Focused attention. This is your ability to concentrate on a specific task while filtering out distractions. Elite performers have trained their focused attention to operate at intensities and durations that would exhaust most people. They can maintain peak concentration for hours, not minutes. Open monitoring. This is a relaxed awareness that allows you to notice important information in your environment without losing focus on your primary task. Elite performers develop this to maintain situational awareness while engaged in complex activities. Meta-attention. This is your awareness of your own attention, knowing when you're focused, when you're distracted, and how to consciously redirect your mental resources. Elite performers have exceptional meta-attention, allowing them to catch and correct attention drift before it impacts performance. The neuroscience of elite focus reveals several key principles that peak performers use to maintain cognitive superiority. Single tasking mastery. While average performers believe they can multitask effectively, elite performers understand that the brain can only truly focus on one cognitively demanding task at a time. When you attempt to multitask, you're actually rapidly switching between tasks, which creates cognitive friction and reduces performance quality on all activities. Elite performers embrace what researchers call monotasking, dedicating their full cognitive resources to one important task until completion or until they reach a natural transition point. This allows them to enter flow states and access deeper levels of cognitive processing. Attention residue management. Scientists have discovered that when you switch from one task to another, part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task. This attention residue reduces your cognitive capacity for the new task. Elite performers minimize attention residue through deliberate transition rituals that clear their mental workspace before engaging new challenges. Cognitive load optimization. Your brain has limited working memory capacity, typically 72 pieces of information. Elite performers understand this limitation and structure their thinking to optimize cognitive load. They externalize routine information, use systematic approaches to complex problems, and avoid overloading their mental bandwidth with unnecessary details. Deep work architecture. Elite performers create environmental and procedural systems that support sustained focus. They eliminate notification distractions, design workspaces that promote concentration, and establish routines that signal to their brain that it's time for deep cognitive engagement. Elite performers also understand the rhythm of focused attention. They know that attention operates in natural cycles and that trying to maintain peak focus continuously leads to mental fatigue and decreased performance. Instead, they use strategic focus intervals followed by specific recovery periods that actually enhance their next focus session. This principle, known as ultradian rhythms, suggests that the brain naturally operates in 90-minute cycles of high and low alertness. Elite performers align their most demanding cognitive work with their natural high alertness periods and use low alertness periods for routine tasks or recovery activities. The development of elite focus requires specific training protocols that most people never engage in. Attention training, like physical fitness, Attention can be strengthened through progressive training. Elite performers practice sustained attention exercises starting with shorter periods and gradually increasing duration and intensity. They might begin with 15-minute focused sessions and progress to 4-hour deep work. Blocks distraction resistance. Instead of avoiding distractions entirely, elite performers train their ability to resist them. They deliberately practice maintaining focus in the presence of potential interruptions, building mental resilience that serves them in chaotic real-world environments. Attention switching. Elite performers also train their ability to rapidly shift focus when necessary. They practice moving cleanly between different types of cognitive tasks, maintaining performance quality during transitions. Mindfulness integration. Many elite performers incorporate mindfulness practices not for relaxation but for attention training. Mindfulness meditation literally strengthens the brain circuits responsible for sustained attention and reduces the tendency toward mind-wandering. The research reveals that elite performers have developed what neuroscientists call cognitive control networks, brain systems that can override automatic habitual responses in favor of goal-directed behavior. This allows them to maintain focus even when their immediate impulses would lead them toward distractions. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that attention is trainable. They don't accept their current attention span as fixed. They systematically work to expand their capacity for sustained focus. They treat attention training as seriously as an athlete treats physical conditioning. The modern world presents unprecedented challenges to sustained attention. But this actually creates greater opportunity for those who master focus. In an environment where most people are cognitively scattered, the ability to maintain deep focus becomes a massive competitive advantage. Elite performers aren't just better at focusing. They're operating with fundamentally different attentional capabilities, while others are surfing the shallows of scattered attention. They're diving deep into cognitive territories that produce breakthrough insights, elegant solutions, and superior performance. The moment that separates elite performers from everyone else isn't when everything is going smoothly. It's when the pressure is crushing. The stakes are highest and lesser performers crumble. Elite minds have developed a fundamentally different relationship with pressure and stress, transforming what destroys most people into what elevates their performance to extraordinary levels. While the average person experiences stress as a threat that degrades their capabilities, elite performers have rewired their stress response system to interpret pressure as energy that can be channeled for enhanced performance. This isn't positive thinking or mental toughness. It's a systematic neurological reprogramming that changes how their brains and bodies respond to high-stakes situations. The science behind this transformation is revolutionary. When most people face pressure, their sympathetic nervous system triggers the fight-or-flight response, flooding their body with stress hormones that narrow attention, impair complex thinking, and reduce fine motor control. This biological response was designed for physical survival threats, not for modern performance challenges. Elite performers have learned to activate what researchers call the challenge response instead of the threat response. In challenge mode, stress hormones still elevate, but they're accompanied by different neural and hormonal patterns that actually enhance cognitive function, improve focus, and increase resilience. The key difference lies in how elite performers interpret pressure situations. While most people focus on what they might lose, reputation, status, opportunity, elite performers focus on what they can gain: growth, learning, achievement. This cognitive reframing literally changes their physiology, transforming stress from a performance inhibitor into a performance enhancer. Elite performers understand several crucial principles about pressure that escape most people. Pressure is information. Instead of experiencing pressure as an emotional burden, elite performers use it as data. High pressure tells them that the situation is important, which helps them calibrate their level of preparation and focus accordingly. They don't try to eliminate pressure. They learn to decode and utilize it. Arousal optimization. Peak performance requires optimal arousal, not too little which leads to complacency and not too much which leads to overwhelm. Elite performers have developed precise awareness of their optimal arousal state and specific techniques to reach and maintain that state regardless of external pressure. Stress inoculation. Elite performers deliberately expose themselves to pressure situations in training so that competition or high-stakes scenarios feel familiar rather than overwhelming. They practice under conditions that are actually more stressful than real performance situations, making actual pressure feel manageable by comparison. Present moment anchoring. When pressure mounts, most people's minds race toward catastrophic future scenarios or get hijacked by past failures. Elite performers have trained their attention to remain anchored in the present moment where their skills and preparation can actually be applied. The neurological mechanisms that elite performers use to transform pressure include cognitive reappraisal. This is the ability to reframe stressful situations in ways that reduce their threat value while maintaining their motivational importance. Elite performers might reframe "I can't afford to fail" as this is an opportunity to show what I'm capable of. Breathing regulation. Elite performers use specific breathing techniques that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, counterbalancing stress arousal with calming influences. These aren't relaxation techniques. They're performance optimization protocols that maintain ideal psychophysiological states. Attentional control under pressure. Attention naturally narrows and becomes rigid. Elite performers have trained their ability to maintain flexible attention. They can zoom in on critical details or zoom out for broader perspective as needed. Emotional granularity. While most people experience pressure as a general state of anxiety or stress, elite performers have developed precise emotional vocabulary that allows them to identify specific feeling states and respond appropriately. They might distinguish between excitement, nervousness, determination, and intensity, each requiring different optimization strategies. Elite performers also understand the temporal dynamics of pressure. They know that pressure typically builds before important events, peaks during critical moments, and requires specific recovery protocols afterward. They've developed stage-appropriate strategies for each phase. Pre-performance elite performers use this phase for final preparation, visualization, and arousal optimization. They don't try to relax completely. They calibrate their energy to match performance demands. During performance, their focus shifts entirely to execution. They've trained their minds to operate on automatic pilot for routine elements while maintaining conscious control over strategic decisions and adaptations. Post-P performance. They engage in specific protocols to process the experience, extract lessons, and return their nervous system to baseline. This recovery phase is crucial for maintaining long-term performance capacity. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers have developed what psychologists call pressure privilege. The recognition that high-pressure situations are audacous, that most people will never experience. They understand that pressure is often a signal that they're operating at levels where significant achievement is possible. This reframe transforms pressure from something to be endured into something to be grateful for. Elite performers often report that their most pressure-filled moments become their most treasured memories, not because the pressure was pleasant, but because it allowed them to discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. The development of pressure mastery requires specific training that most people avoid. Elite performers deliberately seek out pressure situations, gradually increasing the intensity and complexity until their comfort zone expands to encompass scenarios that would overwhelm others. They also study their own pressure responses meticulously, identifying personal triggers, optimal pre-performance routines, and recovery protocols that work specifically for their unique psychology and physiology. The research is clear. Elite performers don't have less stress or pressure than others. They have different relationships with stress and pressure. They've transformed their stress response from a limiting factor into a performance multiplier, giving them access to heightened states of capability when it matters most. This transformation isn't just about sports or business performance. It's about life mastery. The ability to thrive under pressure determines how you handle job interviews, difficult conversations, creative challenges, and leadership moments. It's the difference between shrinking when life demands your best and rising to meet the moment with everything you've got. There exists a state of consciousness so powerful that elite performers across every domain, from athletes and artists to entrepreneurs and scientists, spend their entire careers trying to access it consistently. In this state, performance transcends normal limitations. Time seems to slow down or speed up. Self-consciousness disappears and extraordinary achievements feel effortless. Psychologists call this flow state. But elite performers know it is something far more practical. The neurological configuration that produces their greatest breakthroughs, their most satisfying performances, and their moments of genuine genius. Flow isn't mystical or accidental. It's a specific neurological state that can be understood, accessed, and optimized through precise psychological and environmental engineering. Elite performers have decoded the formula for reliable flow state access, giving them a competitive advantage that goes beyond skill, knowledge, or effort. When your brain enters flow state, several remarkable changes occur simultaneously. Transient hypofrontality. The prefrontal cortex responsible for self-criticism and conscious control partially deactivates. This creates the effortless feeling of flow by reducing the mental interference that normally constrains performance. Altered time perception. The brain's time processing centers shift function, creating the sensation that time either slows down, allowing for enhanced reaction time and decision or speeds up, making hours feel like minutes. Enhanced pattern recognition. The brain's pattern recognition systems become hyperactive, allowing for intuitive connections and insights that would be impossible in normal. Consciousness-optimized brain chemistry. Flow triggers the release of 5 powerful neurochemicals: neuropencrine, dopamine, endorphins, anandamide, and GABA, creating a cocktail that enhances focus, learning, creativity, and performance while reducing pain and anxiety. Elite performers understand that flow state isn't something that happens to them. It's something they engineer through specific preconditions and triggers. Challenge skill balance. Flow requires the perfect intersection of high challenge and high skill. If the challenge exceeds your skill level, you experience anxiety. If your skill exceeds the challenge, you experience boredom. Elite performers constantly calibrate this balance, seeking challenges that stretch their abilities without overwhelming them. Clear goals and immediate feedback. Flow emerges when you have crystal clear objectives and can immediately assess your progress toward those objectives. Elite performers structure their activities to provide continuous feedback loops that guide performance. Optimization in real time. Complete concentration. Flow requires the total merging of attention with action. Elite performers eliminate all potential sources of distraction and create environmental conditions that support absolute focus on the task at hand. Sense of control. Flow occurs when you feel complete control over your actions and their outcomes. This doesn't mean controlling external circumstances. It means knowing that your skills are adequate for the challenge and that your preparation has been thorough. Elite performers have identified specific flow triggers that reliably induce this optimal state. Environmental triggers. These include high consequences, rich environments, unpredictability, and novelty. Elite performers deliberately expose themselves to situations that naturally promote flow states. Psychological triggers. These include intense focus, clear goals, immediate feedback, and the challenge-skill ratio. Elite performers structure their training and performance environments to maximize these conditions. Social triggers. These include shared goals, equal participation, familiar communication, and close proximity. Elite performers understand how to create group dynamics that promote collective flow states. Creative triggers. These include novelty, unpredictability, and complexity. Elite performers regularly expose themselves to new experiences and perspectives that stimulate creative flow states. The development of flow state mastery requires systematic training that most people never engage in. Flow state mapping. Elite performers study their own flow experiences, meticulously identifying the specific conditions, triggers, and practices that reliably produce flow for their unique psychology and activity domain. Progressive challenge calibration. They continuously adjust challenge levels to maintain the optimal balance between difficulty and capability, ensuring that their activities remain in the flow channel as their skills develop. Attention training. Since flow requires complete concentration, elite performers develop exceptional attentional control through specific focus training exercises and mindfulness practices. Recovery optimization. Flow states are neurologically demanding. Elite performers have developed sophisticated recovery protocols that restore their nervous system's capacity for future flow experiences. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that flow state becomes more accessible with practice. They don't wait for flow to happen accidentally. They create conditions that make flow inevitable. They also recognize that different activities and contexts require different flow state configurations. The flow state of a surgeon performing complex surgery differs from the flow state of a musician improvising jazz, which differs from the flow state of an entrepreneur negotiating a crucial deal. Elite performers develop domain-specific flow protocols that account for the unique demands and characteristics of their particular field while leveraging universal flow principles. The research reveals that individuals who regularly access flow states experience enhanced performance. Tasks are completed with greater speed, accuracy, and innovation. Accelerated learning. Skill acquisition occurs up to 250% faster in flow states. Increased Meru's states. Increased creativity. Novel solutions and breakthrough insights emerge more frequently. Greater life satisfaction. Flow experiences are among the most meaningful and fulfilling moments in human experience. Tragedy is that most people rarely experience flow states despite their enormous benefits. They remain trapped in anxiety when challenges exceed skills or boredom when skills exceed challenges, never finding the sweet spot where peak performance becomes possible. But elite performers have cracked this code. They've learned to engineer the psychological and environmental conditions that make flow states reliable rather than accidental. They've transformed peak performance from an occasional lucky break into a systematic capability that they can access on demand. This isn't just about professional achievement. It's about human potential. Flow states represent your brain operating at its highest level, accessing capabilities that remain dormant in normal consciousness. Learning to engineer these states reliably is perhaps the most powerful performance enhancement technology available. To human beings, elite performers aren't just better at their crafts. They're operating in fundamentally different states of consciousness that to amplify every aspect of their cognitive and physical capabilities. And now that you understand the flow state formula, you can begin engineering these peak performance states in your own life. The path to elite performance is paved with failure, setbacks and obstacles that would break most people's spirits. What separates those who rise to extraordinary heights from those who give up isn't. It's the absence of adversity. It's the presence of mental resilience, so robust that challenges become fuel rather than roadblocks. Elite performers don't experience less stress, fewer failures, or easier paths than others. In fact, they often face more intense pressures and higher stakes failures precisely because they're operating at levels where the consequences are magnified. The difference is that they've developed psychological armor that transforms adversity into advantage. Mental resilience isn't about toughness in the traditional sense. It's not about gritting your teeth and powering through pain. True resilience is a sophisticated psychological framework that allows you to maintain optimal performance even when circumstances are actively working against you. The neuroscience of resilience reveals that elite performers have developed several key brain adaptations enhance stress recovery while most people remain physiologically activated long after stressful events. Elite performers return to baseline functioning rapidly. Their nervous systems have been conditioned to process and release stress efficiently rather than accumulating chronic tension. Cognitive flexibility under pressure. Resilient individuals maintain the ability to think creatively and strategically even when stressed. Their brains don't lock into rigid patterns when threatened. They remain adaptive and responsive. Optimized threat assessment. Elite performers have calibrated their threat detection systems to be sensitive to real dangers while filtering out false alarms. They don't waste mental energy on imaginary threats or minor inconveniences. Rapid learning integration. Resilient individuals process failure experiences quickly and extract actionable lessons without getting trapped in emotional rumination. They convert setbacks into strategic intelligence. The foundational components of elite mental resilience include antifragility. While most people aim to be resilient, returning to their original state after stress, elite performers develop antifragility, the ability to actually get stronger from stressors. They seek out challenges that would overwhelm others because they've learned to extract growth from adversity. Stoic acceptance. Elite performers have internalized the fundamental distinction between what they can control and what they cannot. They invest their mental energy exclusively in controllable factors while accepting uncontrollable circumstances without emotional resistance. Identity separation. Resilient performers separate their core identity from their performance outcomes. They understand that failing at something doesn't make them a failure and succeeding at something doesn't define their worth. This separation protects them from the emotional volatility that destroys most people's consistency. Meaning-making. Elite performers have developed sophisticated frameworks for extracting meaning and purpose from difficult experiences. They don't just endure hardship. They transform it into fuel for growth, motivation, and deeper understanding. Resource regeneration. Resilient individuals understand that mental and emotional resources are finite and require active restoration. They've developed systematic approaches to renewing their psychological energy rather than depleting themselves through chronic stress. The development of unbreakable mental resilience requires specific training protocols. Controlled adversity exposure. Elite performers deliberately expose themselves to manageable levels of stress and failure in training environments. This stress inoculation builds psychological calluses that protect them during real-world challenges. Cognitive reframing mastery. They practice transforming negative interpretations into empowering perspectives. This isn't positive thinking. It's strategic perspective taking that maintains motivation and learning orientation during difficult periods. Emotional regulation training. Resilient performers develop precise control over their emotional responses. They can experience the full range of human emotions without being controlled by them. Extracting useful information while maintaining functional capacity. Recovery protocol implementation. They treat psychological recovery with the same systematic approach that athletes use for physical recovery. This includes specific practices for processing stress, restoring mental energy, and preparing for future challenges. Elite performers also understand the social dimension of resilience. They've built support networks that enhance rather than drain their psychological resources. Strategic relationship building. They surround themselves with people who challenge them to grow while providing emotional support during difficult periods. Mentor and peer networks. They maintain relationships with individuals who've overcome similar challenges and can provide perspective, guidance, and encouragement. Professional support systems. They're not afraid to work with coaches, therapists, or other professionals who can help optimize their mental health and performance capacity. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers have developed what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the ability to not just recover from adversity, but to emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. They view every setback as containing the seeds of future breakthrough. The research shows that mental resilience is highly trainable. The brain's capacity for stress management, emotional regulation, and cognitive flexibility can all be enhanced through specific practices and experiences. Elite performers don't have naturally superior resilience. They've systematically developed it. This resilience training often involves mindfulness and meditation. These practices strengthen the brain circuits responsible for emotional regulation and stress recovery while reducing reactivity to negative thoughts and emotions. Physical conditioning. Elite performers understand that physical and mental resilience are interconnected. They use exercise not just for physical fitness but as training for mental toughness. Sleep optimization. Quality sleep is crucial for stress recovery and emotional regulation. Elite performers treat sleep as a performance technology rather than a luxury. Nutrition and recovery. They understand that psychological resilience is supported by physical health, including proper nutrition, hydration, and recovery practices. The ultimate goal of resilience training isn't to become emotionally numb or unnaturally tough. It's to develop the psychological flexibility to maintain optimal performance regardless of external circumstances. Elite performers can be vulnerable and human while remaining functionally unbreakable. Elite performers share one characteristic that immediately separates them from everyone else. They are obsessively committed to optimization. While most people settle for good enough and plateau at acceptable levels of performance, elite minds are driven by an insatiable hunger for improvement that borders on compulsion. This isn't perfectionism. Perfectionism is fear-based and often paralyzing. This is optimization obsession, a systematic data-driven pursuit of incremental gains that compound into extraordinary results over time. Elite performers understand that in competitive environments, the difference between good and great is often measured in tiny margins that most people never even notice. The psychology of obsessive optimization is rooted in what researchers call growth mindset. But elite performers take this concept far beyond its popular understanding. They don't just believe they can improve. They've made improvement their primary identity and organizing principle. Elite performers approach optimization with scientific rigor, baseline measurement before they can improve anything. They establish precise baseline measurements of current performance. They track metrics that others ignore, measuring variables that seem insignificant to casual observers but prove crucial for peak performance. Variable isolation. They understand that improvement comes from systematically isolating and optimizing individual variables rather than making broad unfocused changes. They might spend weeks optimizing their warm-up routine, their decision-making speed, or their recovery protocols, controlled experimentation. Elite performers treat their development like a laboratory. They implement changes systematically, measure results objectively, and maintain rigorous documentation of what works and what doesn't. Marginal gains accumulation. They understand that small improvements when compounded over time create massive advantages. A 1% improvement might seem insignificant, but 1% better every day for a year results in being 37 times better. The domains that elite performers optimize include physical systems. Their bodies are precisely calibrated machines. They optimize their nutrition, sleep, exercise, and recovery with the attention to detail that others reserve for their most important projects. Cognitive processes. They systematically enhance their thinking speed, decision accuracy, pattern recognition, and learning efficiency through specific training protocols. Emotional regulation. They treat emotional optimization as seriously as physical conditioning, developing precise control over their psychological states and stress responses. Environmental design. They engineer their surroundings to support peak performance, eliminating friction and designing systems that make excellence easier and mediocrity harder. Skill development. They approach skill acquisition with methodical precision, breaking complex abilities into component parts and optimizing each element separately before integrating them into fluid performance. Time and energy management. They treat their attention and energy as finite resources to be allocated strategically rather than spent carelessly. Elite performers use sophisticated frameworks for optimization. The 8020ths analysis. They continuously identify which 20% of their activities produce 80% of their results, then ruthlessly eliminate or delegate low-impact activities while doubling down on high-leverage behaviors. Bottleneck identification. They understand that systems are only as strong as their weakest component. They systematically identify and address performance bottlenecks rather than randomly improving strong areas. Feedback loop acceleration. They engineer rapid feedback mechanisms that allow them to detect and correct performance deviations immediately rather than waiting for delayed results. Risk-adjusted optimization. They balance the potential gains from optimization against the risks of overengineering or creating fragile systems that break under pressure. The Obsessive Optimizer's toolkit includes data collection systems. Elite performers are meticulous data collectors. They track performance metrics, energy levels, mood states, environmental factors, and any other variables that might impact their results. Analysis protocols. They've developed systematic approaches to analyzing their data, identifying patterns, and extracting actionable insights from their performance information implementation frameworks. They use structured approaches to implementing optimizations, ensuring that changes are sustainable and don't create unintended negative consequences. Review and iteration cycles. They conduct regular reviews of their optimization efforts, celebrating gains while identifying new opportunities for improvement. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand the psychology of sustainable optimization. They know that obsessive improvement can become counterproductive if it leads to burnout, analysis paralysis, or perfectionist paralysis. They manage this through optimization cycling. They alternate between periods of intensive improvement and periods of stable performance, allowing their systems to consolidate gains before pursuing new optimizations. Satisficing protocols. They know when to stop optimizing and when good enough actually is good enough, preventing over-optimization. In loop-packed areas, recovery integration. They build recovery and restoration into their optimization protocols, understanding that sustainable improvement requires sustainable practices. Joy preservation. They maintain practices and perspectives that keep optimization enjoyable rather than burdensome, understanding that intrinsic motivation is more sustainable than external pressure. The compound effect of obsessive optimization is staggering. Elite performers who consistently seek small improvements over long periods achieve results that seem impossible to those who only make sporadic efforts at change. This optimization obsession also creates a competitive moat. While competitors might copy obvious strategies or techniques, they rarely have the discipline to implement the detailed optimization protocols that create elite performers. True advantages. The research shows that the highest performers in every field share this characteristic. They never stop trying to get better. They're never satisfied with their current level of performance. No matter how impressive it might seem to others, they've made improvement itself their greatest skill. This isn't about being driven by insecurity or external validation. Elite performers optimize because they're intrinsically motivated by the process of becoming. They understand that human potential is essentially unlimited and that every day offers opportunities to discover new capabilities. The most counterintuitive secret of elite performance is this. The best performers in the world are also the best at strategic recovery. While average performers believe that success comes from grinding harder and longer, elite minds understand that peak performance is impossible without systematic restoration. This isn't about work-life balance. It's about performance optimization through strategic rest. Elite performers don't recover despite their ambition. They recover because of it. They've discovered that the right kind of rest actually enhances performance capacity rather than detracting from it. The neuroscience behind this principle is revolutionary. During periods of strategic rest, your brain doesn't shut down. It engages in crucial maintenance and enhancement processes that are impossible during active performance, memory consolidation, sleep, and specific types of rest. Convert short-term learning into long-term memory and skill integration. Elite performers literally improve while they sleep because their brains are processing and organizing the day's learning. Neuroplasticity enhancement. Rest periods trigger the growth of new neural connections and the strengthening of existing pathways. Without adequate recovery, the brain can't physically adapt to support higher levels of performance. Creative problem solving. The brain's default mode network, which activates during rest, is responsible for breakthrough insights and creative solutions. Many elite performers report their best ideas emerge during deliberate recovery periods. Stress hormone regulation. Chronic performance without recovery leads to dysregulated stress hormone production, which impairs decision-making, learning, and physical performance. Strategic rest resets these systems. Elite performers have developed sophisticated recovery protocols that go far beyond simply sleeping more. Active recovery. This involves engaging in activities that restore energy while maintaining some level of engagement. Elite performers might use light exercise, skill practice at reduced intensity, or engaging hobbies as active recovery, passive recovery. This includes complete rest from performance-related activities. Elite performers protect time for genuine relaxation, understanding that the brain needs periods of true disengagement to restore its capacity. Social recovery. Human connection and positive social interactions have measurable restorative effects on stress hormones and mental energy. Elite performers cultivate relationships that energize rather than drain them. Environmental recovery. Elite performers design environments that promote restoration. This might include spaces that reduce sensory stimulation, natural environments that restore attention, or locations associated with positive emotions. Spiritual recovery. This involves connecting with sources of meaning and purpose that transcend immediate performance goals. Whether through meditation, religious practice, or philosophical reflection, this type of recovery restores motivation and perspective. The strategic timing of recovery is as important as the recovery itself. Micro-recovery. Elite performers integrate brief recovery periods throughout their performance sessions. This might include 60-second breathing breaks, short walks between intensive work sessions, or momentary attention shifts. Daily recovery. They protect specific periods each day for restoration activities. Treating recovery time as non-negotiable, appointments with themselves. Weekly recovery. Elite performers typically include longer recovery periods in their weekly schedules, allowing for more complete restoration and preparation for the next performance cycle. Seasonal recovery. They plan extended recovery periods aligned with natural cycles or performance seasons. Using these times for reflection, planning, and comprehensive restoration. Elite performers also understand the principle of recovery debt. The idea that inadequate recovery creates a cumulative deficit that eventually forces dramatic performance degradation. They monitor their recovery status as carefully as they monitor their performance metrics. Recovery monitoring includes physiological indicators, heart rate variability, sleep quality, resting heart rate, and other biomarkers that indicate recovery status. Psychological indicators, mood state, motivation levels, stress perception, and cognitive function assessments. Performance indicators, reaction time, decision-making quality, skill execution, precision, and other performance variables that reflect recovery adequacy. Perhaps most importantly, lead performers have developed what researchers call recovery self-efficacy, the confidence that they can restore their energy and performance capacity through strategic rest. This eliminates the anxiety that many people feel about taking time off, allowing them to recover more completely. They also understand that different types of performance stress require different recovery approaches. Physical recovery. For physically demanding activities, recovery focuses on tissue repair, energy replenishment, and nervous system restoration. Cognitive recovery. For mentally demanding work, recovery emphasizes attention restoration, decision-making capacity renewal, and creative energy regeneration. Emotional recovery. For emotionally challenging situations, recovery involves stress, hormone regulation, social connection, and meaning-making activities. Elite performers have also mastered the art of preventive recovery, implementing restoration strategies before they become necessary. Rather than waiting until they're exhausted or burned out. The research is clear. Elite performers who prioritize strategic recovery maintain higher average performance levels and demonstrate greater longevity in their careers compared to those who prioritize volume over restoration. This creates a paradox that confuses many observers. Elite performers often appear to be working less intensively than their struggling competitors. Yet, they achieve superior results. The secret is that their recovery protocols allow them to perform at higher quality levels during their active periods. Recovery isn't a sign of weakness or lack of commitment. It's a performance technology that amplifies every other aspect of elite achievement. The performers who last longest and achieve most are those who've learned to recover as strategically as they perform. Elite performers have a fundamentally different relationship with emotions than most people. While average performers are often controlled by their feelings, making decisions based on momentary emotional states, avoiding challenges that trigger discomfort, or becoming paralyzed by fear and anxiety. Elite minds have developed what researchers call emotional sovereignty. This doesn't mean they're emotionally numb or suppressed. In fact, elite performers often experience emotions more intensely than others. The difference is that they've learned to use emotions as information and energy rather than being controlled by them as dictates and limitations. The neuroscience of emotional mastery reveals that elite performers have developed enhanced connections between their prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, and their LYIC system, the emotional brain. This neural integration allows them to experience emotions fully while maintaining cognitive control over their responses. Elite emotional mastery is built on several key principles. Emotional granularity. While most people experience emotions in broad categories, good, bad, happy, sad, excited, nervous, elite performers have developed precise emotional vocabulary that allows them to identify subtle emotional states and respond appropriately. They might distinguish between frustration, irritation, disappointment, and anger, each requiring different optimization strategies. Emotional usefulness. Elite performers evaluate emotions based on their utility for performance rather than their immediate pleasantness. They might welcome anxiety before a big presentation because it sharpens their focus even though the feeling is uncomfortable. Emotional timing. They understand that emotions have natural life cycles and that trying to force emotional changes often backfires. Instead, they work with emotional rhythms using techniques to optimize timing rather than forcing immediate emotional shifts. Emotional energy. Elite performers treat emotions as energy that can be channeled toward performance goals. Anger can fuel determination. Fear can enhance preparation and excitement can boost creativity when properly directed. The specific emotional skills that elite performers master include anxiety optimization instead of trying to eliminate anxiety. Elite performers transform it into heightened alertness and preparation energy. They understand that some anxiety is optimal for peak performance and have techniques for calibrating anxiety levels. Frustration channeling when things don't go as planned. Elite performers convert frustration into problem-solving energy rather than allowing it to become destructive anger or discouragement. Fear processing. They've developed systematic approaches to processing fear that allow them to extract useful information. What am I not prepared for? What skills do I need to develop or preventing fear from paralyzing action? Confidence calibration. Elite performers understand that confidence should be calibrated to competence. They neither inflate their confidence beyond their abilities nor underestimate their capabilities. They work to align confidence with realistic assessment of their skills and preparation. Motivation sustainability. They've learned to maintain motivation during long periods without external validation or immediate results. Drawing energy from internal sources rather than depending on external recognition. Elite performers use specific techniques for emotional optimization, emotional preloading before challenging situations. They deliberately cultivate emotional states that support peak performance. This might involve visualization, music, physical movement, or specific thinking patterns that generate optimal emotional energy, real-time emotional adjustment during performance. They monitor their emotional state and make micro-adjustments as needed. They might use breathing techniques to reduce anxiety, positive self-talk to maintain confidence, or visualization to sustain motivation. Emotional recovery after intense performance periods. They have specific protocols for processing and recovering from emotional intensity, preventing emotional burnout and preparing for future challenges. Emotional learning. They treat every emotional experience as data, analyzing what triggered specific emotional responses and how those responses affected their performance. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers have developed emotional anti-fragility, the ability to grow stronger from emotional challenges rather than just surviving them. They seek out emotionally challenging situations because they've learned that emotional growth accelerates performance development. They also understand the social dimension of emotional mastery, emotional contagion management. They're aware of how others' emotions affect them and have strategies for maintaining optimal emotional states even in emotionally chaotic environments. Emotional leadership. They understand how their emotional state influences others and use this awareness to create positive emotional environments that re-enhance collective performance. Emotional boundaries. They've learned to be empathetic and connected while maintaining emotional boundaries that prevent them from being overwhelmed by others' emotional states. The development of emotional mastery requires specific training. Mindfulness practice. This develops awareness of emotional states as they arise, creating space between emotional triggers and responses. Cognitive reframing. They practice interpreting emotional situations in ways that support rather than undermine their performance goals. Exposure therapy. They deliberately expose themselves to emotionally challenging situations in controlled environments, building emotional resilience and response flexibility. Emotional experimentation. They test different emotional regulation strategies to discover what works best for their unique psychology and performance demands. Elite performers also understand that emotional mastery is ongoing development rather than a fixed achievement. They continue refining their emotional skills throughout their careers, adapting their approaches as they encounter new challenges and as their performance demands evolve. The research shows that emotional intelligence is one of the strongest predictors of peak performance across domains. Elite performers who master their emotional lives gain access to psychological resources that remain unavailable to those controlled by their feelings. This emotional sovereignty becomes a massive competitive advantage because it allows elite performers to maintain optimal function regardless of external emotional pressures. Internal emotional states are the emotional chaos that often surrounds high-stakes performance situations. Elite performers don't just set goals. They engineer visions so compelling that their entire psychology becomes organized around achieving them. While most people have vague wishes or generic objectives, elite minds have developed crystal clear, emotionally charged visions that function as psychological magnets, pulling them toward extraordinary achievement. The neuroscience behind visioning reveals why this practice is so powerful. When you repeatedly visualize specific future scenarios with emotional intensity, your brain begins to treat these imagined futures as memories. This activates the same neural networks that guide behavior based on past experience, essentially programming your subconscious to move toward your envisioned future. Elite performers understand that vision isn't just positive thinking, it's strategic psychology. A properly constructed vision serves multiple performance functions. Motivation generation. A compelling vision creates sustained motivation that transcends temporary setbacks, daily frustrations, or external circumstances. Elite performers draw energy from their future vision when present circumstances might otherwise discourage them. Decision filter. Every choice becomes simpler when filtered through a clear vision. Elite performers evaluate options by asking, does this move me toward my vision or away from it? This eliminates decision fatigue and prevents distraction by irrelevant opportunities. Resource guide. Vision provides a framework for investing time, energy, and attention. Elite performers align their resource allocation with their long-term vision rather than responding to immediate pressures or random opportunity development. Vision shapes identity by providing a clear picture of who you're becoming. Elite performers don't just have goals. They have a clear sense of the person they're evolving into, which guides their daily behaviors and choices. The components of elite-level vision construction include sensory richness. Elite performers create visions that engage all 5 senses. They don't just imagine achieving their goals. They visualize exactly what success will look, sound, feel, smell, and taste like. This sensory detail makes the vision more neurologically compelling. Emotional intensity. They connect powerful emotions to their visions, understanding that emotion is the fuel that powers sustained action. They imagine not just what they'll achieve, but how achieving it will make them feel and what it will mean to them. Specific detail instead of generic success imagery. Elite performers visualize specific scenarios with precise details. They imagine particular moments, specific achievements, and exact circumstances of their success. Process integration. They don't just envision end results. They visualize the process of achieving their goals. They imagine themselves executing the daily actions, making the necessary sacrifices, and overcoming predictable obstacles. Values alignment. Elite performers ensure their visions align with their core values and authentic desires rather than externally imposed expectations or social pressures. Elite performers use sophisticated visioning techniques. Future memory creation. They practice recalling their future achievements as if they were memories, creating neural pathways that guide current behavior toward envisioned outcomes. Multiple timeline visualization. They create detailed visions for different time horizons to 30 days, 90 days, 1 year, 5 years, ensuring that their short-term actions align with long-term aspirations. Obstacle integration. Instead of creating unrealistically positive visions, they imagine overcoming specific challenges and setbacks. Mentally, rehearsing resilience and problem solving. Environmental visualization. They envision the environments where their success will unfold, including the physical spaces, the people present, and the broader context of their achievements. Identity. Visualize themselves embodying the characteristics, skills, and mindset of their future successful self using vision to guide personal development. The implementation of elite visioning requires systematic practice. Daily visualization. Elite performers engage in regular visualization sessions, typically spending 10 to 20 minutes daily mentally rehearsing their future success and the path to achieving it. Vision boarding. Many create visual representations of their goals using images, words, and symbols that reinforce their vision during their daily environment. Written vision statements. They craft detailed written descriptions of their envisioned future, reading and refining these regularly to maintain clarity and emotional connection. Guided imagery. Some work with coaches or use recorded guidance to enhance the depth and effectiveness of their visualization practice. Vision sharing. They selectively share their visions with supportive individuals who can provide accountability and encouragement. Elite performers also understand the dynamic nature of vision. Vision evolution. They regularly review and refine their visions as they grow and circumstances change, ensuring their future targets remain challenging yet achievable. Vision updating. As they achieve certain elements of their vision, they expand and elevate their future goals, maintaining the psychological pull toward continued growth. Vision flexibility. While maintaining core vision elements, they remain flexible about specific paths and timing, adapting their approach while preserving their ultimate direction. The research shows that elite performers who engage in systematic visioning achieve their goals at significantly higher rates than those who rely on willpower alone. Visualization literally rewires the brain to support goal achievement by enhancing motivation. Clear visions provide emotional fuel for sustained effort, improving focus. Specific targets help filter distractions and maintain attention on relevant activities, increasing confidence. Mental rehearsal of success builds self-efficacy and reduces performance anxiety. Optimizing strategy. Visualizing the path to success helps identify necessary resources and potential obstacles. Accelerating learning. Mental practice supplements physical practice, speeding skill development. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that vision without action is fantasy, but action without vision is aimless. They combine compelling future imagery with systematic daily behaviors, creating a powerful synergy between inspiration and implementation. The vision advantage of elite performers isn't just about goal setting. It's about psychological architecture. They've learned to use the power of imagination to organize their entire mental and behavioral system around achieving extraordinary outcomes. Elite performers have a fundamentally different relationship with learning and skill development than most people. While average performers often view learning as something that happens automatically through experience or occasional training, elite minds treat skill development as a sophisticated science that can be optimized, accelerated, and systematically refined. This mastery mindset is built on several revolutionary principles that separate elite learners from casual practitioners. Learning how to learn. Elite performers are meta learners who study the learning process itself. They understand cognitive science, memory formation, skill acquisition, and performance psychology. They don't just practice, they optimize their practice methodology. Deliberate practice. While most people confuse activity with progress, elite performers engage in what researchers call deliberate practice, focused, systematic training specifically designed to improve performance. This isn't just repetition, it's strategic skill development with continuous feedback and adjustment. Error seeking. Instead of avoiding mistakes, elite performers actively seek out their weaknesses and errors. They understand that the edge of competence where mistakes happen is where the most rapid learning occurs. Systematic deconstruction. Elite performers break down complex skills into component parts, master each element separately, then integrate them into fluid performance. They don't try to learn everything at once. Progressive overload. Just as athletes progressively increase physical challenges, elite performers systematically increase the difficulty of their skill challenges, ensuring continuous growth rather than plateau. The neuroscience of elite learning reveals several key principles that peak performers. Leverage myelin development. Repeated practice of specific skills literally wraps neural pathways in myelin, a fatty substance that increases signal transmission speed. Elite performers understand this and structure their practice to maximize productive myelination neuroplasticity optimization. They know that the brain remains changeable throughout life and use specific techniques to enhance neuroplasticity, including proper sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. Spaced repetition instead of cramming. Elite performers use scientifically proven spacing intervals to optimize long-term retention and skill consolidation. Interlink. They mix different skills or concepts within practice sessions rather than focusing on one element at a time, which enhances learning transfer and adaptability. Testing effect. Elite performers regularly test their skills under challenging conditions rather than just practicing in comfortable environments. Elite performers use sophisticated learning strategies, mental models. They develop frameworks for understanding how their domain works, allowing them to see patterns and principles that guide decision and skill application. Chunking. They organize information and skills into meaningful chunks that can be processed more efficiently, allowing them to handle greater complexity. Cross-training. They study related fields and disciplines to gain insights that enhance their primary domain performance. Coach and mentor networks. They systematically seek out expert guidance rather than trying to figure everything out independently. Performance analysis. They meticulously analyze their performance through video review, data analysis, and expert feedback to identify improvement opportunities. The motivation systems of elite learners are also unique. Process orientation. They find satisfaction in the learning process itself rather than requiring external validation or immediate results. Growth identity. They define themselves as learners and improvers rather than as fixed entities with static abilities. Challenge seeking. They actively pursue challenges that stretch their abilities rather than staying in comfortable competence zones. Failure reframing. They view failure as information and opportunity rather than as judgment on their worth or potential. Long-term perspective. They maintain motivation during extended periods of practice without immediate payoff. Understanding that mastery requires time investment. Elite performers also understand the physical and environmental factors that optimize learning energy management. They practice when their energy and attention are at peak levels rather than treating practice as something to fit into leftover time. Environmental design. They create practice environments that minimize distractions and maximize focus and learning effectiveness. Recovery integration. They understand that learning consolidation happens during rest periods and prioritize sleep and recovery as part of their skill development process. Nutrition and hydration. They optimize their physical state to support cognitive function and learning capacity. The social dimension of elite learning includes learning communities. They surround themselves with other serious learners who challenge and inspire continued growth. Teaching others. They understand that teaching accelerates their own learning by forcing deeper understanding and retention. Feedback seeking. They actively solicit honest feedback from coaches, peers, and mentors rather than avoiding potentially uncomfortable input. Collaboration. They engage in collaborative learning that exposes them to different perspectives and approaches. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that different stages of skill development require different learning approaches. Beginner stage focus on fundamental technique, basic pattern recognition and establishing correct habits. Intermediate stage emphasize error detection and correction, strategy development and performance under varied conditions. Advanced stage concentrate on fine-tuning, innovation and maintaining peak performance under pressure. Expert stage focus on continued innovation, teaching others and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their domain. Elite performers also recognize that mastery is not a destination but a continuous journey. They maintain beginner's mind even as they achieve expert status, staying curious, humble and committed to continued growth. Risk. The research confirms that individuals who approach learning with elite mindsets achieve higher levels of performance faster and maintain their capabilities longer than those who rely on talent alone or casual practice methods. This mastery mindset creates a massive competitive advantage because it ensures continuous improvement even after others plateau. While competitors rest on their achievements or assume they've learned enough, elite performers continue evolving, adapting, and refining their capabilities. The difference between good and great often comes down to the quality of the learning process rather than the quantity of practice time. Elite performers who master the art of learning itself gain the ability to continuously upgrade their capabilities throughout their careers. Elite performers understand something that escapes most people. Individual excellence is amplified exponentially when combined with masterful social influence. The highest achievers in every field aren't just technically superior. They've mastered the psychology of human interaction, enabling them to inspire, influence, and lead others toward collective excellence. This isn't about manipulation or political maneuvering. Elite social performance is about understanding human psychology so deeply that you can create environments where everyone performs at their highest level while achieving your own objectives. The neuroscience of social influence reveals that humans are fundamentally wired for connection and tribal cooperation. Elite performers leverage this biological programming to create what researchers call positive influence. The ability to shape others' behavior in ways that benefit everyone involved. Elite communication mastery. Peak performers have developed communication skills that go far beyond basic speaking and listening. They understand the psychological mechanisms that make messages compelling, memorable, and actionable. Emotional contagion control. They recognize that emotions spread rapidly through social networks and have learned to deliberately cultivate and transmit emotional states that enhance group performance. Trust architecture. Elite performers systematically build trust through consistency, competence, and character demonstration. Understanding that trust is the foundation of all effective influence. Value creation. They approach every social interaction by asking, "How can I create value for this person?" rather than, "What can I get from this interaction?" The specific social skills that elite performers master include active listening. They listen not just to respond, but to understand deeply, making others feel heard and valued while gathering crucial information about motivations, concerns, and opportunities. Strategic questioning. They use sophisticated questioning techniques to guide others toward insights and conclusions rather than trying to impose their viewpoints directly. Narrative mastery. Elite performers understand that humans think in stories and have developed the ability to craft compelling narratives that make their ideas memorable and persuasive. Non-verbal expertise. They've mastered body language, vocal tonality, and spatial dynamics to ensure their non-verbal communication supports and amplifies their verbal messages. Contextual adaptation. They adjust their communication style, energy, level, and approach based on their audience's personality, values, and current emotional state. Elite performers use specific influence strategies. Reciprocity. They lead with value creation, understanding that humans have a strong psychological drive to return favors and maintain balanced relationships, social proof. They demonstrate that their ideas and approaches are validated by others whom their audience respects and admires. Authority. They establish credibility through demonstrated competence, relevant experience, and consistent results rather than relying on titles or positions. Consistency. They help others see how their proposed actions align with values and commitments that the person has already expressed. Scarcity. They highlight unique opportunities and limited availability when appropriate, understanding that perceived scarcity increases psychological value. Liking. They find genuine common ground and shared values, understanding that people are more influenced by those they like and trust. The leadership dimension of elite social performance includes vision casting. Elite leaders paint compelling pictures of possible futures that inspire others to commit their best efforts toward shared objectives. Culture creation. They understand that organizational culture emerges from the behaviors that are modeled, measured, and rewarded. And they systematically shape culture through their daily actions. Talent development. They see developing others' capabilities as a force multiplier that enhances their own effectiveness while creating loyalty and loyalty engagement. Decision-making transparency. They help others understand not just what decisions are made but why. Building trust and teaching others to make similar quality decisions. Conflict resolution. They approach conflicts as opportunities to strengthen relationships and improve outcomes rather than as problems to be avoided. Elite performers also master the group dynamics that determine collective performance. Team chemistry. They understand the psychological factors that create higher-forming teams and actively cultivate positive group dynamics. Role optimization. They help team members understand how their unique strengths contribute to collective success. Maximizing individual engagement and group effectiveness communication systems. They establish clear, efficient communication protocols that ensure information flows effectively throughout the organization. Accountability culture. They create environments where people hold themselves and each other accountable to high standards without creating fear or blame. Innovation. Encouragement. They foster psychological safety that encourages creative thinking and intelligent risk-taking. The social intelligence of elite performers extends to network development. They systematically build relationships with individuals who can provide knowledge, opportunities, and support while offering value in return. Stakeholder management. They identify all parties who can impact their success and develop strategies for aligning interests and managing relationships. Reputation management. They understand that reputation is built through consistent actions over time and actively manage how they're perceived by important stakeholders. Coalition building. They create alliances and partnerships that amplify their capabilities and extend their influence beyond what's possible through individual effort alone. Perhaps most importantly, elite performers understand that social performance is ultimately about service. The most influential people are those who consistently help others achieve their goals while advancing their own objectives. This creates a positive feedback loop where success builds on itself through strengthened relationships and expanded opportunities. The research shows that social skills often become the limiting factor for otherwise talented individuals. Technical competence might get you in the game, but social performance determines how high you can rise and how much impact you can create. Elite performers invest in developing their social capabilities with the same intensity they bring to developing their technical skills. They study psychology, practice communication techniques, seek feedback on their interpersonal effectiveness, and continuously refine their ability to work with and through others. This social mastery becomes increasingly important as careers advance. The higher you rise in any field, the more your success depends on your ability to influence others, build teams, and create collective achievement that exceeds what any individual could accomplish alone. Elite performers don't just excel at executing existing strategies. They consistently generate innovative solutions that redefine what's possible in their fields. While most people rely on conventional approaches and incremental improvements, elite minds have developed systematic methods for breakthrough thinking that creates genuine competitive advantages. This innovation capacity isn't about creativity for its own sake. It's about strategic creativity that produces practical solutions to complex problems. Elite performers understand that in rapidly changing environments, the ability to think beyond current paradigms often determines who thrives and who becomes obsolete. The neuroscience of innovation reveals that breakthrough ideas emerge from specific brain states and cognitive processes that can be cultivated and optimized. Default mode network activation. Revolutionary insights often occur when the brain's default mode network is active during rest, meditation, or low-intensity activities. Elite performers create conditions that activate this network systematically. Cross-domain pattern recognition frequently involves combining patterns from different fields or disciplines. Elite performers expose themselves to diverse knowledge domains to increase their pattern recognition capability. Constraint relaxation. Breakthrough thinking requires temporarily suspending limiting assumptions. Elite performers have developed techniques for identifying and relaxing cognitive constraints that prevent innovative solutions, divergent, convergent cycling. The innovation process alternates between divergent thinking, generating many possibilities, and convergent thinking, evaluating and refining ideas. Elite performers master both modes and know when to apply each. Elite performers use specific strategies to enhance their innovation capacity. Cross-pollination. They systematically study fields outside their domain to import successful principles and adapt them to their context. They ask, how do other industries solve similar problems? First principles thinking. Instead of accepting conventional wisdom, they break problems down to fundamental principles and reason up from basic truths. This often reveals solution paths that others miss. Constraint reframing. They view limitations as design challenges rather than insurmountable obstacles, often discovering that constraints actually stimulate more creative solutions. Future backwards. They imagine ideal future states and work backwards to identify what would need to be true for those scenarios to become reality. Assumption challenging. They systematically question every assumption underlying current approaches, asking what if the opposite were true or what if this constraint didn't exist. The environmental conditions that elite performers create for innovation include diverse input sources. They expose themselves to wide-ranging information sources, understanding that breakthrough insights often come from unexpected connections between disparate ideas. Psychological safety. They create mental environments where wild ideas can be explored without judgment. Understanding that most innovations initially sound impractical or impossible. Time for reflection. They protect unstructured thinking time, recognizing that insights often emerge during periods of relaxed contemplation rather than intense focus. Collaboration with diverse thinkers. They engage with people who think differently than they do, using diversity of perspective to stimulate new approaches. Rapid prototyping. They test ideas quickly and cheaply rather than overanalyzing them, understanding that learning through experimentation accelerates innovation. Elite performers also understand the psychological barriers to innovation and have developed specific techniques to overcome them. Fear of failure. They reframe failure as learning and view unsuccessful experiments as valuable data rather than personal shortcomings. Expertise trap. They remain intellectually humble despite their accomplishments, understanding that expertise can sometimes prevent them from seeing new possibilities. Confirmation bias. They actively seek disease-confirming evidence for their ideas and invite others to challenge their assumptions. Functional fixedness. They practice seeing familiar objects and concepts in new ways, breaking free from conventional usage patterns. Social conformity. They maintain intellectual independence while remaining open to others' ideas, avoiding both groupthink and isolation. The implementation of innovative ideas require specific skills that elite performers master: stakeholder alignment. They understand how to present innovative ideas in ways that address stakeholders' concerns and demonstrate value. Resource acquisition. They develop compelling cases for investing resources in unproven concepts, often starting with minimal viable experiments. Resistance management. They anticipate and prepare for resistance to new ideas, developing strategies for overcoming organizational and psychological inertia. Iteration and refinement. They view initial implementations as starting points for continuous improvement rather than finished products. Scaling strategies. They understand how to evolve innovative solutions from small experiments to large-scale implementations. Elite performers also recognize different types of innovation and apply appropriate strategies for each incremental innovation. Continuous improvement of existing solutions through systematic optimization and refinement. Disruptive innovation. Creating new approaches that initially serve different markets but eventually transform entire industries. Breakthrough innovation. Developing solutions that represent fundamental advances in capability or efficiency. Business model innovation. Reimagining how value is created, delivered, and captured rather than just improving products or services. Social innovation. Creating solutions that address social problems while potentially generating economic value. The research shows that innovation capability correlates strongly with career success and organizational performance across industries. Companies and individuals who consistently generate valuable innovations maintain competitive advantages that are difficult for others to replicate. Elite performers understand that innovation isn't just about having good ideas. It's about developing systematic capabilities for generating, evaluating, and implementing breakthrough solutions. They've learned to think beyond conventional boundaries while maintaining practical focus on creating real value. This innovation edge becomes increasingly important as the pace of change accelerates. The solutions that work today may be obsolete tomorrow, making the ability to continuously generate new approaches essential for sustained elite performance. The ultimate distinction of elite performers isn't just what they achieve in their lifetimes. It's the enduring impact they create that continues long after they're gone. While most people focus on immediate results and short-term success, elite minds think in terms of legacy, building performance systems and contributing value that transcends their individual presence. Legacy thinking fundamentally changes how elite performers approach their work, relationships, and development. Instead of asking "How can I win today?" they ask "How can I create value that will compound over decades?" This long-term perspective influences every decision and creates a completely different performance paradigm. The psychology of legacy thinking involves several key mental shifts. Systems over outcomes. Elite performers focus on building robust systems that generate sustained results rather than optimizing for single achievements. They understand that systems outlast individuals and create compounding value over time, development over achievement. They prioritize developing capabilities, both their own and others, over achieving specific goals. Knowing that enhanced capabilities produce multiple achievements across extended periods, contribution over consumption. Legacy thinkers focus on what they can contribute to their field, organization, or society rather than what they can extract for personal benefit. Principle over tactics. They identify and codify the underlying principles that drive their success, making their insights transferable to others and applicable across different contexts. Teaching over hoarding. Elite performers with legacy orientation actively share their knowledge and develop others, understanding that their impact multiplies when they enable others' success. Legacy-oriented elite performers engage in specific practices that extend their influence. Knowledge documentation. They systematically capture their insights, methodologies, and lessons learned, creating resources that others can use long after they're no longer directly involved. Mentor development. They invest heavily in developing protégés who can carry forward their approaches and insights, essentially extending their impact through other people. System building. They create organizational systems, processes, and cultures that embody their performance principles and continue functioning without their direct involvement. Innovation contribution. They push the boundaries of what's possible in their fields, establishing new benchmarks and possibilities that elevate everyone's performance. Institutional development. They build or strengthen institutions that will continue creating value long after their individual participation ends. The research reveals several characteristics of elite performers who create lasting legacies. Values. Clarity. They have clearly defined values that guide their decisions and ensure consistency across different situations and time periods. Long-term thinking. They regularly consider the 10, 20, and 50-year implications of their current actions and decisions. Stakeholder integration. They understand how their success impacts multiple stakeholders and work to create shared value rather than zero-sum outcomes. Continuous learning. They maintain beginner's mind throughout their careers, staying curious and adaptable even as they achieve expert status. Authentic leadership. They lead from their genuine strengths and values rather than trying to conform to external expectations of how leaders should behave. Legacy thinking also influences how elite performers handle success and failure. Success stewardship. They view their achievements as resources to be stewarded responsibly rather than trophies to be displayed, using success as a platform for creating greater impact. Failure integration. They extract maximum learning from setbacks and share those lessons with others, transforming personal failures into collective wisdom. Transition planning. They actively prepare others to continue their work and maintain the standards they've established, ensuring continuity beyond their individual involvement. Wisdom sharing. They distill their experience into principles and insights that can benefit others facing similar challenges. The practical implementation of legacy thinking includes regular legacy reviews. Elite performers periodically assess whether their current activities align with their long-term legacy intentions, making adjustments to ensure consistency. Succession development. They identify and develop individuals who can maintain or exceed their performance standards in their absence. Knowledge transfer systems. They create formal and informal mechanisms for sharing their expertise and insights with others. Value creation metrics. They measure their success not just by personal achievements but by the value they create for others and the positive changes they enable. Institutional contribution. They actively participate in building or strengthening the institutions and communities that support their field. Legacy thinking also influences daily behavior and decision quality standards. Knowing that their work may influence others for years, legacy-minded performers maintain exceptional quality standards even when shortcuts might be available. Relationship investment. They build deeper, more meaningful relationships, understanding that lasting impact often comes through personal connections and influence. Character development. They prioritize character development alongside skill development, knowing that character determines how their capabilities are used. Continuous contribution. They look for ways to add value in every interaction and situation, building a pattern of contribution that becomes their signature approach. Perhaps most importantly, legacy thinking creates meaning that sustains motivation during difficult periods. When elite performers connect their daily efforts to long-term impact, they tap into powerful motivational resources that transcend immediate circumstances. The research shows that individuals who think in legacy terms maintain higher performance levels later in their careers and experience greater life satisfaction. They avoid the burnout and meaninglessness that often afflict high achievers who focus solely on personal accomplishment. Legacy thinking doesn't require sacrificing current performance for future impact. It actually enhances present performance by providing deeper meaning and broader perspective that elevates the quality of daily effort. Elite performers who master legacy thinking create a powerful paradox by focusing less on their immediate personal success and more on their long-term contribution. They often achieve greater personal success than those who pursue only individual achievement. This is the ultimate performance strategy. Building excellence that serves not only your immediate goals but creates lasting value that continues growing long after your direct involvement ends. Elite performers who master this approach don't just achieve peak performance. They create peak performance systems that elevate entire fields and generations of future performers. You now possess the psychological blueprints used by the world's highest performers. You understand how elite minds think, process information, handle pressure, and create extraordinary results. But knowledge without application is merely interesting. Information and elite performers are defined by their commitment to implementation. The research is unequivocal. Peak performance isn't about genetics, luck, or circumstances. It's about psychology. It's about how you think, how you process challenges, how you relate to pressure, and how you organize your mental resources around achieving meaningful objectives. Every principle in this audio book has been proven in laboratories, validated in real-world performance, and demonstrated by elite performers across every domain of human achievement. The neuroscience is clear, the psychology is documented, and the strategies are actionable. But here's what separates those who transform their performance from those who simply collect. Interesting concepts. Elite performers don't just learn these principles. They embody them. They don't just understand the psychology of peak performance, they become it. The choice before you is simple but profound. Will you remain a consumer of performance content or will you become a practitioner of performance psychology? Will you add these insights to your collection of good ideas or will you systematically implement them until they become your new cognitive operating system? Become your new cognitive operating system. Elite performers share one characteristic above all others. They close the gap between knowing and doing. They take proven principles and turn them into practiced capabilities. They convert understanding into execution. Your elite mind isn't something you hope to develop someday. It's something you can begin building today. Every principle you implement, every mental model you practice, every performance strategy you apply moves you closer to joining the ranks of those who don't just dream about exceptional achievement, they engineer it. The psychology of peak performance isn't theory, it's technology. It's a set of tools that, when properly applied, produces reliable results. The same mental technologies that created the world's greatest achievements are now available to you. The question isn't whether you have the potential to think and perform like an elite mind. The question is whether you have the discipline to develop that potential systematically, consistently, and relentlessly. Your elite mind is waiting. The only question is, are you ready to claim it?